Speaker.
Madam Fox.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I didn't draw the short straw, I lost the paper, rock, scissors. But I stand with the House to commemorate the 800th anniversary of the granting of the Magna Carta in 1215, the significant document that occurred 800 years ago as of yesterday. 800 years have passed since the granting of the Magna Carta and the brokered peace between King John and the rebel barons. 800 years have passed since the first steps towards a commitment to basic human rights, first provided for and recognised by the Crown. Although 800 years later, we know there are still improvements to be made in ensuring the word and rule of law is applied equally and indiscriminately and is treated with the greatness and respect. The Magna Carta was the result of a rebellion against arbitrary abuse of authority by the monarch. Many might point to the establishment of the Māori Party as an act of rebellion in being established to represent the power of the people under which we represent. The product of this stand is significant. It paved the way for other fundamental texts, such as the writ of habeas corpus, the US Constitution, the UN's Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and even our very own treaty. The Magna Carta sought to limit the unbridled power of King John, and we recognise that it's the foundation of our law, but we think that we should also recognise the place of the treaty in our law. And that quote that Mr. Finlayson has already articulated, I'll repeat for the benefit of the House. No free man shall be seized or imprisoned or stripped of his rights or possessions or outlawed or exiled or deprived of his standing in any way, nor will we proceed with force against him or send others to do so, except by the lawful judgment of his equals or by the law of the land. And I want to point to a few pieces of legislation that stood in this land: the Suppression of Rebellion Act, the Tohunga Suppression Act, and the Native Schools Act. Today we find contemporary examples of inequality, such as the establishment of the Māori seat, first done so to ring-fence the Māori vote. In fact, in this House, you can get rid of a Māori seat by 50% of the vote, but for any other seat, it requires 75%. That in itself needs to be addressed in the interest of equality. How through the reflection of that quote that I used before, many issues have yet to be resolved. How do we recognise the principles of the Treaty of Waitangi, water rights, Ngāti Whātua, Ōrākei, rights of first refusal? How do we honour the Treaty of Waitangi so that there is not a circumvention of our law? The quote is especially fitting when we consider these things alongside the treaty, and I think the last part is important: to no one deny or delay the rights of justice. And so I stand proudly to represent the Māori Party in calling for a recognition of the principles and the spirit of the Magna Carta 800 years later. Kia ora.
The question is the motion be agreed to. Those of that opinion will say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. Petitions have been delivered.